Hey, welcome to Next Level Method Podcast. I'm Richard Ryerson.
And I'm Matt Lilly.
And we're here to help you take your life to the next level. Let's get started. Wow, Terri Cole on the show.
Great podcast.
So fun doing it. Are you having fun doing this?
Yeah, I am having fun. I mean, you just love every week we get to have great guests come on the podcast. We get to talk to them. It's just amazing the people that come on. It's just, I learned, I hope people out there are listening, but if you're not, you're missing out because I learned so much just doing the podcast.
Maybe because we're getting so much free therapy out of it.
Yes, if you want to get free therapy, start your own podcast.
Yeah, right. No, she's great. She's a licensed psychotherapist, a relationship expert, and founder of what she's called the Real Love Revolution, the Boundary Boot Camp, and a co-founder of Crushing Codependency, and a new book out. That's why she came on the show, was to talk about Boundary Boss. Mm-hmm. And I've never had this is a first for me. I've never had anybody talk about boundaries.
No, yeah.
I don't.
I've had people talk about boundaries. I've kind of mentioned, but not actually.
Never deep dove into it.
Right, to actually have it be a thing of, no, you actually, and I think you'll hear throughout the podcast that, what are your boundaries? I mean, it's like most of them are resonating in your subconscious, so you're always negotiating with your own boundaries, with yourself, which creates internal conflict, which guess what? Creates conflict with others.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think if you asked me before this, hey, Richard, what are your boundaries? Like, I know what they are, but in reality, I'm like you. You were talking this, and as you were saying, I'm like, I don't know what my boundaries are.
Right, it's like, because she goes over specific areas, like what are your boundaries with this area? That the physical, the mental, the emotional. She was going through those different areas. I was like, I have no clue what. I mean, we have them, but they're subconscious or unconscious, and so we're operating from kind of this conflict of, oh, is it okay with this person to break this? I mean, it's not a conscious thing. I don't walk around all day going, what's my boundary here and what should I be doing? But I maybe should be thinking about what are my boundaries here, because a lot of times I think we fall into just saying yes too much.
Well, yeah.
Right?
I think that's what kind of was revealed to me, and you're
People
right.
Pleasing,
because the so what is like, well, so what if I know what they are? Well, that's how you live a healthy, productive life.
Right. And there's freedom in it.
And empowerment in it.
Exactly.
And you think back, and I know for me, I'm certainly guilty in my relationships and with family and even with my spouse, people pleasing, saying yes when I should say no, or just pushing all that down and then it comes out sideways in a weird way.
Well, and that was, now that you say that, one of my favorite phrases was you either verbalize it, write it down, or you act it out.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that was one of those aha moments for me where I'm like,
that's me.
Oh gosh. Well, and that's everyone else in my world too. It's like when somebody's like being defensive or being reactive, is because they don't have a space. They don't have a space to really unpack that or deal with it. And I'm like, wow, how important is that? So, great stuff.
The book is great. I read the book Boundary Boss. I encourage everyone to pick it up. And she was just a fascinating guest. You guys are really going to enjoy this conversation. Hey, go check us out at nextlevelmethod.com to learn more of what we're talking about here, all around energy, elimination, relationships, and purpose. Learn more about our live events. And please follow us on your favorite podcast application. It could be Stitcher, it could be Apple, Google Play, Spotify, whatever it is. Subscribe, rate, and review. It does wonders. We're trying to get noticed in a sea of 2.8 million podcasts now, and we're trying to get noticed. We appreciate your support. Again, thank you so much for being a follower of Next Level Method. Let's get on with this conversation with Terri Cole, the author of Boundary Boss, here on Next Level Method. Well, Terri Cole, so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael and Matt. I'm really pumped to be here.
Yeah, what's fun about this conversation, well, I've never had a conversation about boundaries.
I haven't either.
And so I'm really looking forward to this. I guess the most frustrating thing is that we only have a limited amount of time to talk, because we could probably talk all day about this. But, we never were taught the skills to effectively, number one, how to recognize when we're crossing boundaries or someone has crossed our own boundaries. So I'm excited to talk about this. So I guess
I am too. Yeah.
Can we define what boundaries are, though? I mean, I guess I know what the term means in general, but it's kind of like saying I know what leadership means, but when I try to define it, it gets a little messy. Same with boundaries, right? What are they?
Well, the way that I define them, or you can think about them as your own personal rules of engagement. It's how others can and cannot interact with you, and you must have the ability to express those things, right? Because it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to say it. I break down boundaries into you knowing your preferences, your desires, your limits, and your deal breakers, and having the ability to communicate them.
And I guess let me take it a step further. Okay, let me ask the so what question. I think I know the answer to this, but why is that so important? Why is it so important that we understand the importance of boundaries and healthy communicate, or at least expressing boundaries correctly? Why is that so important?
Because really, Michael, when you think about it,
oh, it's Richard,
your
by the way.
preferences.
Sorry.
Oh, Richard. Oh, I'm
yep.
sorry.
No, it's no worries.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
You're really, you personally, both of you, all of you, your boundaries are what make you uniquely you. So that's your preferences, desires, limits, and deal breakers. They're really the things that make you you. And many of us have been taught that if we're the cool gal, if we're easy breezy, no fuss, no fuss, no muss, or whatever, that these things have become badges of honor, that there's something good about that. But what I find is that if we say yes when we want to say no, under the guise of being nice and being easy, we're really giving the people in our lives, and a lot of times it's the people we love the most, corrupted intelligence about who we are.
Oh man, I'm so guilty of that. I mean, I think about all the times where I've said yes when I wanted to say no, or I've hidden my feelings, and what comes out is and I do that often enough, it becomes compartmentalized, and the pressure keeps building, and then it comes out in weird and ugly ways, like passive aggressive behavior, or sometimes even explosions, right? Or I get depressed, or I withdraw, or all those things, which just leads to dysfunctional communication, dysfunctional relationships, right?
Yeah. And
absolutely.
And even as we're talking about this, I'm sitting here going, okay, what are my boundaries? I mean, like in my head, I'm processing this going, okay, I have no idea what my own boundaries are, or I mean, and I think you do actually on your website, you have a downloadable thing, I think, to help us identify that. Is that accurate?
I do. I actually have a quiz, and it's just boundaryquiz.com is where people can get it. It's free. And I've come up with archetypes. So that you can see, because boundaries come in three different sort of flavors. They can be porous, which are too malleable, they're too loose. They can be rigid, which are too solid, too huge, too amplified for the situation, or they can be healthy. Yet within all of that, there are nuances, right? Because there's other things for both of you that make up your boundary skill set, or your desired boundaries. You might be an introvert. You might be an extrovert. All of those things impact your boundary preferences. But I'd say the biggest indicator is what I call your downloaded boundary blueprint. So this is, we all have in our unconscious mind, how the world is sort of, it's like the schema, right, of the world, and how we're supposed to relate to boundaries in relationships, with finances, with friends, at work, and in leadership as well. So it's answering questions and understanding like what you learned in your family of origin, the home that you grew up in, whether it was a family, a home, a foster home, it doesn't matter, because it's the adults in your life and the culture of that group that really have a profound impact. Because some families are closed systems where not a lot of people could come in and out, or they demanded full loyalty, like groupthink. We all have to agree on everything. You're not allowed to have a differing opinion. Some people have open families. So there were a lot of things that got us to where we are, like how we relate to boundaries right now. And unpacking that stuff is actually, it's interesting, but it's important to know about yourself.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm always fascinated. We have so many incredible guests like yourself on the show, and I'm always fascinated on what passion or what in their lives kind of something I would assume in your life helped you focus, made this your life's work, right? I mean, there was either a catalytic event or an aha moment, or maybe just something, progression over time. But what for you was drove you to really want to make this your life's work?
Well, part of it is that I was a boundary disaster for a long time and had a lot of pain and suffering. I didn't identify it as such because I didn't know. I start off the book talking about the fact that I was a bridesmaid 8 times in my 20s, and probably should have said no to about 4 of those ugly dress experiences.
Right.
But I couldn't, as Richard, you had just said before, like you're guilty of saying yes when you want to say no. Imagine someone asks you to be in their wedding. It's supposed to be this massive honor.
Right.
And I was like, who am I to say, I can't afford it because I couldn't. I was
Right.
like 20 and living in New York City and had no money.
Right.
But I couldn't. And so the resentment it becomes a cumulative experience when you have disordered boundaries of getting real resentful.
I love in your book, Boundary Boss, where you talk about, right after you talk about the bridesmaid, you gave the example how you grew up, and you kind of described a lot of I know people that I know, and some elements of my family were like that, where dad didn't talk much, he was the breadwinner, the mom was, taking care of everything, and then dad comes home, everything, let's don't upset dad, he wants to watch sports, let's make sure we change it, okay, and so it just starts becoming ingrained in you that you don't want to disappoint, right? And so that's that environment you came out of, which is probably like millions of childhoods that people have grown up with, not necessarily abusive or anything like that, but it was just lacking in communication and lacking of, talking about your boundaries and talking about, speaking to your experience, right? I mean, I love how you detailed that in the book. I mean, it really, once you kind of confronted that head on, it started to put a lot of stuff into place, right?
Oh, yeah. It made me understand that I learned at an early age that I should prioritize the way my father felt, not prioritize. And the example I give in the book, that's actually funny that you brought that up, is, my sisters and I could be watching the last 3 minutes of the movie Grease. And if my father came down and said, hey, sports fans, that was the cue.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That we knew golf was coming on. It didn't matter where we were, what we were watching. Not one of us would ever have thought to say, can you wait 3 minutes? It's the end of the movie. Never. We couldn't wait to run out of that room and be like, okay, bye. And so what do you learn from that? Which is, you certainly don't learn to prioritize the way you feel. And then you have family systems. Mine was one where there are certain forbidden emotions. Like, my family was kind of a waspy family where anger was just out. Nobody could express anger, which of course doesn't mean we weren't angry. It just means it goes underground. Right. And then I learned to transform feelings of anger into sadness, because we don't have the power to stop feeling, because we're not God, we're just human beings, and it has to come out.
Yeah.
So then, as you were saying before, Richard, you made a good point of it'll then come out sideways, kind of like in passive aggressive remarks, because you're frustrated, and that you become this powder keg. It doesn't go away. And so all of that complicates the crap out of being able to know your boundaries and then communicate them, because really we were taught, certainly I know women in particular, most of us were raised and praised for being self-abandoning codependents. That's a fact.
Yeah. Do we have to do that work? Is it critical that I do that kind of in-depth analysis of my childhood to define my boundaries? Or can I, at this point from day one, not even really fully understanding it, go, okay, this is not acceptable. This is a non-negotiable for me? Or do you have to do the work to really kind of go back and see where it came from? I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that, but
it's a great question, though. It's a valuable question, because we're talking about efficiency and, what if there's no reason to go back. Even as a therapist, I've always been sort of the mind, I'm not interested in what happened in third grade, unless what happened in third grade is blocking you from creating the life or the career or the relationship that you want now. Then I'm very interested.
Right.
So I think that we can start in the here and now, people who are listening. If you're wondering, if you're like, I don't know, what are my boundaries and where do I need boundaries? We can start by doing a resentment inventory.
Oh, I like that. So you look at, because that's gonna point you to the real meat of it, right? Yeah. How do you do that? How do you do a resentment inventory?
How do we do that?
Well, you get honest with yourself and make a list and say, right now, who am I harboring frustration, anger, resentment against in my life? And you've got to be able to allow yourself to have those feelings, because it makes you a human being. You're not a bad person if you feel that way. But you've got to be specific. It doesn't help in our relationships if I say to my husband, you need to be more sensitive. He's like, excuse me, what? What does that actually mean? Right. We need to know within ourselves, What would it mean? Why am I saying that? Why do I feel that way? Oh, here's an incident. This is what happened. And I felt he was insensitive. Let me be specific about that within myself. This becomes your GPS of what relationships might need better boundaries, because we have to have a place to start. Like you said, what do we got to go back to all of our childhood? Not necessarily. But if something happened in childhood that you need to understand, the way that I walk people through it in the book is we do a lot of inventories. We do a lot of childhood looking back, not to linger forever, but to say, oh, I am this way for a reason. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with the way that I am. I learned this. And it's hopeful because it means I can unlearn it. Because a lot of this is modeled behavior.
Right.
What did we see in childhood? And that really impacts what we think we're supposed to be now. So I'm really challenging and inviting and guiding the readers to decide how they want to live. How do you want to interact? And is it important to you to be known? Because without effective boundaries, you will only be so known in your life. Do you want people to intimately know you? And of course, it doesn't have to be all people, but there's no way you can be a successful leader if you have massively disordered boundaries. It's not possible.
Yeah, impossible for sure.
And so what would be I am truly a student of life, and right now I'm a student of yours. So a lot of times we just do interventions right here on the show with Richard and I. It's like, okay, well, when I was a kid, but before we go there, so what's some examples of just when we talk about boundaries, just so we can help more to find out, what are some examples of good boundaries, and what are some examples of, and I know it's probably different based on personalities, but there's probably some overarching like things that are just like, yeah, that's not good. Well, so what are, from my perspective, what are good boundaries? And then what are some areas where we maybe a lot of, when you're dealing with clients that you see all the time, like almost everybody screws up on this boundary. I mean, is there some...
When I would piggyback on that too, is like, how do I know when I've crossed one, I guess? Like, how do I know?
Right. Yeah. That's kind of, I think.
All right. So let's do it in two parts.
Okay.
Let's talk about the categories of boundaries.
Okay.
So we have emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, physical boundaries, which are also include sexual boundaries, and material boundaries. So I'll give you violations in each one of those.
Ooh, this is awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll be really clear because people can extrapolate from that point. So mental boundaries means you know what you think, you know what your opinions are, you are able to have a conversation with someone who has a differing opinion without losing it, without being so mad that they don't think like you do, without getting super hyper upset about the whole thing. A mental boundary violation is someone telling you that your opinion is stupid, that you don't know what you're talking about, that they know more than you do about whatever it is. Moving into emotional boundaries, it's when you know what is your side of the street emotionally, meaning I don't feel responsible for your feelings, Richard, or your feelings, Matt. I know that I'm not. And even if someone is trying to guilt the crap out of me, when I have healthy emotional boundaries, I know I'm not picking up that guilt because it is not mine. I have language to say, hey, I'm actually not taking that on because you made that choice of your own free will. And if you regret it now, I can have compassion for that. But it's not mine. So that's having healthy emotional boundaries. An emotional boundary violation is someone saying, well, that's stupid that you feel that way. You shouldn't feel that way. I don't understand why you feel that way.
And this is exactly where I wanted to go with that. But what do you do? What do I do? What do I do in that moment where they do cross that boundary? Like if I have that boundary and they say I'm stupid or project, I usually use the phrase like they're projecting their own stuff, trying to project it onto this screen. And it's like, wait a second, I'm not playing that movie. So what do I do if someone's crossed that boundary? Or do you want to go through the rest of these first? I don't want to.
Well, I can quickly just give you something to say. Like, because the book, there's a whole entire chapter that are just scripts for every scenario known to mankind. So if someone says, That's stupid. You shouldn't feel that way.
Right.
You can be clear and say, hey, for clarity, I'm sharing with you how I feel, not asking for your opinion on my feelings.
That's good.
Not asking.
That's real good.
I love that. Okay. So there's a certain amount, it sounds like, of directness with setting boundaries then.
Yes, but in the beginning, a lot of times we need time. So in the beginning, you'll realize after the fact.
Right.
And you're like, why didn't I say something? And I have all kinds of scripts where, and listen, I could go back to the summer of 78 if we needed to with a boundary. Like, you've never really missed that boat. Like, trust me. You can always go back. Oh, hey, I was thinking about 2 Wednesdays ago in the meeting, and I wanted to put it on your radar that.
Oh,
and you
gotcha.
say the thing. So there's a way of doing it neutrally. We've got to get it out of our mind that setting boundaries and having these authentic conversations is super confrontational in some way, or is like bad in some way. It's being honest, and actually it's super generous.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's very giving. It's very value added, as opposed to, because the other just kind of feeds this kind of mendacity and this mediocrity that just we seem to be bathing in all the time.
Indeed. Okay, let me finish the other categories. So material boundaries, that's how you relate to your stuff. That's like, maybe you want to keep your car very clean. Maybe someone else keeps their car like a junkyard. And if that person gets in your car and wants to leave their fast food wrappers all over the place, that would be a material violation to you. You would not want them to leave their crap in your car if you are a neat person. It has to do with how much space you need. Maybe in your home, there are certain areas where other people can't go. Maybe you keep your bedroom sacred if you have children and they don't go in there. Maybe you ask people to take their shoes off when they come into your home, especially if you live in a dirty city like New York, perhaps. Although I love New York, but just saying.
Yes.
So that is material boundaries. That also encompasses whether you lend money or not, whether you lend your stuff or not. Do you like to share food on a plate or not? Those are sort of and they're very unique to you. None of those things are wrong. If you don't like to share food, I don't want to go out to dinner with you, but I understand that is your right to eat your own food.
I was going to ask, do I have any friends after I go through my boundary list? But I guess that's part 2 here.
Yes. And with lending money, right? So my 2 cents on lending money literally is don't do it. That's
right.
it.
Yep.
And if someone asks you, you can say, hey, I actually have a no lending policy. It's not personal to you. It's just the way that I protect my relationships.
Right. Yep.
So I hope you I can brainstorm with you other ways if that would be helpful.
Right.
Like, we don't have to do it just because someone asks us to do it if it goes against our own integrity and if you know it's going to be bad for the relationship, and I promise you it is, unless you're a bank, like don't lend money. And the last one is physical and sexual boundaries. So physical boundaries, really, it's your biggest boundary is your body.
Yeah.
So we've all had the experience of a close talker where someone is just a little too close for your comfort. And a lot of times we will naturally step backwards one step. We're creating space. And maybe Bob from accounting is not that intuitive and will step forward to close the gap. And at that moment, you might need to say, oh, hey, Bob, can you step back? You're a little too close for my comfort. Like, Bob doesn't like it. I don't care. Move back, Bob. Step off. You're in my private zone,
Right.
And then with sexual boundaries, it's anything. A sexual boundary violation is anything that makes you uncomfortable. It's even a lewd comment.
Right.
It's someone commenting about your body, about what you're wearing. And a lot of times, people are clueless. It's not always this nefarious terror, like, I've got a plan to take you down, or like I'm really trying to be inappropriate. But I don't myself let it pass because it is inappropriate. So if someone says, oh, looking good in that skirt, Terry, let's just say Bob from accounting again.
Damn,
I would
Bob.
say, and let's say,
I thought we fired that guy.
Bob.
Didn't we fire that guy from accounting? I thought we did. I swore we gave him
I've gone
notice.
to HR so many times.
Right, exactly. He just became an HR nightmare.
Keep showing up everywhere. Damn, Bob.
Yeah, I think we stopped paying him.
You could say something to him, though, right? Because here's the thing. Especially if I actually like Bob, I'm not going to assume the absolute worst that now he's a predator.
Right.
He could be from another era. Again, it doesn't mean I'll let it pass, but I would be honest and say, hey, Bob, I know you mean this as a compliment, but I'd like to make a simple request that you stop commenting on my clothes and my body because it makes me uncomfortable and I really like working with you. And I wouldn't want this to get in the way of that.
God, I wish I had your tape recorder of your voice in my head all the time. So
she was talking. I was like, "Wow, can you be my enforcer?
Yeah,
just walk around. Just walk around." It's like, Terri, this is what I want you to say to that person.
I know.
Right? It's like, Terri, they're crossing a boundary. Will you take care of them for me?
Yeah, but
but you see, it's possible, right?
Yeah,
just
it is.
Even with what I just
well,
said,
and it's simplistic. The beauty is in the direct simplicity of it, if it makes sense. Hard to do because of I'm a people pleaser, or
right.
I don't want to cause waves, or all those things, right? I mean,
I think part of the reason is because we don't have them defined for ourselves. I mean, I
agree.
Again, when you first started talking, I was like, gosh, even as you list the categories, I'm like, okay, what is my boundary around that, or what is, I'm starting to think through that, thinking, okay, I don't even know. If I don't know what my boundary is, guess what? I can't communicate to other people what my boundary is. So it's not their fault that they're crossing it, because because it's probably more, as you said before, it's more not even flexible. It's not even defined. So I'm judging in the moment whether they're crossing the boundary, and a lot of that's coming from the subconscious. It's not even a conscious boundary, right? I'm like, if Bob steps too close and I don't know that I like close talkers, I'm trying to negotiate. Do I stand here and let Bob talk close to me, or do I back up?
Nope.
Or what's right? I mean, if I don't have it defined, then I'm fighting with myself for the definition in the moment.
Yes, it creates the internal conflict.
Yeah.
But let's go back around. Now that we're aware, now that I've spent decades researching this and writing a beautiful step-by-step process book that people can follow if they really want to learn this, as long as you can read or listen, because I also did an audiobook.
Sweet.
You can do this. And you can do it your way, even if you're an introvert, even if you're a people pleaser, even if you suffer from codependency. And I talk about all those things in the book because, of course, they impact. But back to what Richard had asked before about piggybacking, how do we know when a boundary has been crossed? I think that is a really important part of this conversation. So can we talk about that?
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go for it. Okay, so even though, because a lot of times my therapy clients would be like saying exactly what you were saying, Matt, like, I don't really know. Like,
right.
Is it good? Is it bad? Am I doing it? And I was like, but you do know, because your body has so much wisdom. And that when Bob from accounting is standing too close to you, you have a visceral biological response, which is a constriction somewhere. Could be your chest, your throat, your head. There has been some alarm system that has gone off. So we've learned to ignore the alarm system, to like disconnect it sort of, because we are so many people in my courses and clients over the years, their highest desire is to avoid conflict. And I can't tell you how many emails I get from people saying, I want to draw boundaries, I want to be a boundary boss, but how can I do it with no conflict at all? Like, oh, I'm not that magical, I have no idea. I mean, if you change, right, when we change these ingrained, habituated boundary dances, our dance partner is going to notice if it's a long-term relationship. It isn't like they're not going to notice that you suddenly, let's say the 35-year-old who's been dropping their laundry off at the mom's house, right, on Sundays. And if the mom suddenly is like, oh, hey, don't drop it anymore, they're going to be like, why? I thought this meant you loved me. I thought this was your way.
Right.
And so there will have to be conversations, and you will have to be willing to reestablish new boundaries. More than once. My clients are like, oh my God, phew, I had that conversation. Can't wait to never have it again. I'm like, oh wait, you're definitely going to have it again.
Right.
Because we have short memories. And because when we change in our relationships, it can be very threatening.
Right.
To the people who love us.
Sure.
What happens if we change so much that we don't love
want to
them
be with
anymore?
them. Right, sure, of course.
Unconsciously, So I wanted to hit those two things.
Excellent.
Well, but the beautiful part of it is, I mean, that's where the freedom and the empowerment lies, right? That's kind of the gift of being able to do that. And when we've all witnessed it in our own lives and in other people, when they actually did make that change, no more dropping the laundry off, you know, maybe it felt like peeling a Band-Aid off, but more than likely it felt liberating and empowering. And that's kind of the gift that everybody needs to remember, that doing this work of kind of forcing yourself to be comfortable with that uncomfortableness, something significant is going to happen on the other side. That's how I get through the uncomfortable conversations. And that's what I'm hearing when I'm reading your book and listening to what you're saying. It's like, that's why I'm doing this. And it's like the self-awareness part is so critical, like you said. I mean, when we talk about limiting beliefs and self-doubt, we've talked about that on this show a lot. Of course. And certainly in my coaching, I'm always dealing with that. And even in my own life, is like, I never realized, to your point, Terri, how much I wanted to avoid conflict or all the negative or the limiting belief things until I became aware, and it seemed almost deafening. And when I first turned up that volume, right? And that's probably what happens here when we start to listen to our body. And that's how you start to define what your boundaries are, is like, something's happening here, just listening and being in tune to your body. And it probably can be jarring because you've been tuned out, right? We haven't been listening to it.
Without a doubt. I think that a really good place, though, for people to start, because taking the overwhelm out of it is really important.
Right.
That you don't have to do anything different right now. And we want to jump to action a lot of times. Like when we start learning this stuff, we're like, I can't wait to take the bullhorn and tell everyone there's a new boundary sheriff in town.
Right.
And, you know,
I put a list on the fridge. I put a list on the refrigerator. Here's all the things I will no longer tolerate. If you'll just read that and initial at the bottom, we'll be all good. Right.
Exactly. Right. But that's part of the process, which is that we really want to discharge the anxiety that this process is provoking for us. Right. And what I say is, give yourself a soothing reality check, which is that you don't need to change anything now or ever, right? You're learning something. So be in the learning
mode.
Don't think you got to jump to action, because you don't. And you can start by doing a list of what's okay and what's not okay with you right now, in all areas of your life. We do a really comprehensive list in the book, because your preferences matter.
Right.
Your limits matter. Your desires matter. And when you start writing down, like, I really hate the lighting in my office. Oh, well, that's something you can change. That's a preference. Change the light bulb. You can. Like, get really granular. And we do macro as well. But there's something about making these changes for ourselves, so that we're more comfortable, so that we're prioritizing our own preferences, and we're not burdening other people so much with like looking for all this satisfaction somewhere else. There are many things that we can do for ourselves that we're not, and that is having good internal boundaries, because internal boundaries are really about how you relate to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think you talk a lot about choice, right? I mean, we always have, that is our, I think just in life in general, broad brush, that's about the only thing that we can control, right? Is our choices, right? Because we can't control what's coming in. We can't control what's happening in a second from now, right? But I can choose how I'm interacting in this situation. And that is, I think the more we lean into choosing, the more we reinforce that positive self-worth, or that strength, or that I can have those conversations, because it is a choice. And I think, as you talked earlier, even choosing is empowering. Just making the choice, even if you're not, as you're saying, Terri, even if you're not choosing to do anything in the moment or take action, just choosing a different thought pattern is empowering, right? It's like I was doing that earlier today. I was driving, or actually last night, I was having a conversation, and it was kind of heated by text, which I hate to do, and which is always bad, right? There's nothing good in a heated text exchange. And finally, I just went, I just had to stop myself, and I said, what am I actually doing here? I'm getting upset about little digits that are coming across this electronic device. I said, this is ridiculous. I'm getting upset because these little things are appearing on the screen. I said, that has nothing to do with I had to in essence, talk myself through it, but I decided to make a different choice. I said, I'm choosing not to get upset, because this is just somebody's opinion in the moment. This isn't the reality of what I feel, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right. It does. And being clear, like, I'm not responsible
Yeah.
for what this other person is thinking or feeling. But I think that, there's a big block to people being able to get exactly what Richard just kind of said at the top about I'm only responsible sort of for myself, basically.
Right. I think that's
and
tough.
that's codependency.
Yeah.
I think that's really tough. I struggle with that. I struggle with, if somebody's mad at me, what is, what did I do? What is my part in that? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? And probably 90% of that is not my stuff to carry, I would think, right? Because it's their history, their pre-frame, all the stuff all the bags that they came in the door with are what's triggering that anger. I just happen to be the one that, pushed that last little button, if that makes.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much projection, as you
Right.
were saying before, but also with interacting codependently with others, meaning we're overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the decisions of other people, feeling like actually responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife, whoever has a problem, if that problem, like how you can tell if you're responding codependently is if you got to check your urgency. If you have an urgent need to fix, quote unquote, their problem, that is a codependent response, because here's the thing, their problem, even if you love them to death, their problem is not yours to fix. And it's different with kids, so we don't have to go there, but I'm just talking about adult relationships.
Right.
And what is codependency? At its very base, it's disordered boundaries, but it's also a covert or overt bid for control.
Right.
Like, we don't want our friend to marry that jerk.
Right.
We don't want that other person who's telling us over text that we're bad to think that we're bad. Right?
Right.
And so this is a really important aspect of mental wellness, and being clear about what is your side of the street and what is someone else's side of the street.
Yeah.
And that's all wrapped up in the boundaries with the emotional side, right? The right, emotional or mental, or
Yep.
right, it fits into those categories. So if you have those strong boundaries, then or I wouldn't even say strong. I think defined. For me, it all comes back to defined, right?
I mean, because I even think back, I know when me and my wife went to marriage counseling, and I think a big part of the problem in the relationship, or when it wasn't early on, it was like I would take on those problems. I was always trying to fix her problem, like, or this situation. I was always trying to fix it, right? And like, I felt like, to be quite honest, it was like I felt like that was my identity as a husband, almost, that
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm the savior, I'm the rescuer here.
Right.
And that is total codependency, right? I mean, it's like I was looking for her. Like, it's like the more problems she had, the more validated I felt as a husband,
Yeah.
and that's not normal.
Well, it's normal. I
No,
don't
but
think it's
it
healthy.
is.
Yeah, I think it's extremely normal.
Exactly, Matt. It's so normal that I cannot tell you how many couples I've seen over the past 25 years where this is the main crux of their problem. And I would always say and usually, my experience has been with mostly heterosexual couples where the male is wanting to fix and the woman is wanting to be understood and be supported and to be seen. And I think that there's lots of language that can be really helpful. I used to always just say to the husbands, hey, before making any suggestions, I would just like you to ask her, how can I best support you right now?
Yep.
Just ask the question, because she may say, I really just want to vent.
Yep.
Right? Can I just vent? Can you just hold that space? Or I'm upset, and just knowing that you care makes a difference to me. And I would always say to the husbands, I want you to consider this, because the husbands, and this sounds stereotypical and terrible, but I'm telling you, it's my honest experience.
It's normal, right?
That the husband's biggest complaint would be they wanted more sex, honestly, more physical affection, and the wife wanted more help and to be seen more. And so I would say to the husbands, hey, think of you seeing her more and helping her without her asking you as foreplay. Because nothing will make her feel more open in that way towards you than her knowing you're thinking about her, and her not having to be tortured to ask you to do the things you said you'd already do. Right. And I do believe that shifted a lot of relationships.
Yeah, I know it shifted ours when I stopped trying to solve and just started asking, hey, how can I best support? What do you need? And just listening to it, and even doing that with our kids. I know kids is kind of different, but it's the same thing. We see it. I see it in my wife more as the kids are older, as they're young adults, and she's trying to solve their problems. And I'm like, and I can see the kid going, I just want you to hear what I'm just venting,
Right.
And she's trying to solve. But I do agree with you. And I would say too, that, man, at least for me, I think a lot of it was just knowing that. And when I say king, not king like sitting on a throne and give me my dinner and all that stuff, but that you were valid, or you know what I mean? I was like, well, I really appreciate everything that you do. Just appreciation type. I think that's what men look for a lot.
Yeah.
I know I did. If I just knew that you were proud of me, that was huge. If I knew that you were proud of me, I would
agree.
bend over. I would go to the ends of the earth. And I think that was huge for me. Anyway, not that you all know about my problems.
I was going to say,
life.
so basically we just have guests come on so that
we
Richard
just
and I
need
can
therapy.
get free therapy.
That's right.
We're like, we'll promote your book, but here, we need our lives fixed right now. So if we'll just spend the next hour, in fact, sometimes we don't even air the show. It just gets too personal.
Hey, Terri, one thing that Matt and I are really big on is this, the thing about the hero's journey. We talk about the hero's journey a lot, where people, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with that whole mode. You kind of have a hero's journey, and Matt kind of alluded to it at the beginning. It's like, how did you get to this space? I'm very intrigued because you had to come to a crossroads, because you didn't start out as a psychotherapist. You started out as a talent what is agency or
talent agent? Yeah.
Yeah.
Agent.
And you worked with supermodels and celebrities, and in your 30s you decided to become a psycho. So that to me is the definition of a hero's journey. There had to be some dark nights of the souls for you to be at that crossroads and make a choice. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I think it's perfect, aptly named the hero's journey, because basically part of that is having to go into that dark night on your own and carve your own way, right? It's not going a path that's already there. And so leaving entertainment, where I'd been incredibly ambitious, because that was I thought I was running towards something, and then it was revealed in therapy that I was actually running away from something with all of my ambition. But, I was in my early 30s. I was running a talent agency. And, I had a life that a lot of people, in a job that people were like, that is so cool, Naomi Campbell and this person and that person. And yet I wasn't satisfied in that life. And I was on my own therapeutic journey since I was 19. I stopped drinking when I was 21. It's like I was so into the self-help world, and I just couldn't believe that I could change the hand that I was dealt in life just by knowing myself and making decisions and being present and deciding I would stop drinking, because that was going to derail this amazing life that I could build if I wanted to. I wanted everyone to know about therapy. So in my life, negotiating contracts for supermodels and celebrities, I got to a point where I could no longer deny that the thing that I cared about the very most was the mental health of my clients. I was getting people into drug treatment clinics and eating disorder clinics, and everyone going to therapy and recommending 1,000 books. And I really didn't care much about the Pantene endorsement or the movie contract that I was negotiating. I wasn't that interested. And I was like, you better leave before you start really being bad at your job. And so I left at a time, and I remember my father saying to me, because, according to my father, I left at the height of my career.
Right.
And I remember telling him, oh, hey, I applied to NYU to go to grad school to become a psychotherapist. And he was like, why? Why would you do that?
Right.
And I was like, because I'm not fulfilled with what I'm doing. And he literally said, sounds weird. I was like, thanks for your endorsement. Good thing I don't need your money. Anyway.
Right.
And a lot of people were like, why would you leave this amazing world? Because there's such a, there's such a wrong view or an incorrect view of what it really is. And that was and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew exactly that I wanted to. The second I graduated, I took the test in New York, and I opened my practice literally the next day. I was like, and here's my shingle. I'm open for business. And did that for many, many years. And really I focused on, because I had been a talent agent, I had many clients who were Broadway performers, pop stars, singers, lighting people, directors. So I was really still in entertainment,
Right.
because it's a specific niche,
Right.
like that world, and knowing it from the inside out made me probably a better therapist for those people who had those experiences. And then I got to a point where I really wanted to have a bigger impact. And so that meant then creating a public platform. And that was, I really didn't start a public platform until 2011, I think.
And you know, this is something that we've been really honing in on over the last several podcasts, is really this. We don't always mention the hero's journey. I'm glad you did today, Richard. But it's really that I think for a lot of us, we get stuck in the rut of being normal, or not even being normal, just the rut of, this is what I do because this is who I am, because this is where I
expect to do.
Yeah, and it's just it's uncomfortable but comfortable, right? It's uncomfortable because I don't feel good in my own skin, but it's comfortable because it's what I've always done. So I'm just going to continue to go down this rut that's in the road, right? And I love having guests on that are like yourself, that kind of came to that crossroads, that came to that choice point, and chose the different path. Actively, knowingly, consciously chose it. It wasn't forced upon you.
No.
You know, it was something you chose, and in some cases it is forced upon people. But they still actively take that path, and then it ends up, fulfillment, right? I mean, ultimately, if we die and we made all the widgets and we, checked all the boxes, who gives a shit, right? I mean, I mean, it's ultimately, did we serve others? Did we contribute to the greater good? Did we live a life full of love and compassion? I mean, so I just love that, that it's able for you to define, I guess, so specifically, this is something you did. And I'd love to bring people on that are examples of that, so that it allows the rest of us to know, hey, this is okay. This is better than okay. It sucks. Maybe it did or didn't. I'm sure there was probably some struggles before you made that final decision of,
and there had to be a lot of doubt.
I crazy? Right. Am I crazy? I'm giving up the money. I'm giving up the, the notoriety. I'm giving up the,
Well, there was fear. There was definitely fear. I would say I knew for about 3 years.
Yeah, there we go.
That I needed to get the heck out.
Yeah.
Before I did. And then when I finally got down to, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you afraid of? You know that no matter what you do, you will do it to the best of your ability, and you will succeed. Like that, I had enough evidence to know that I was willing to do whatever the work was. But it was the money, because I hadn't been that great with my money up until that point. Like I had traveled around the world. I just did really whatever I wanted and did not save very much money. And then I said to myself, can you be happy and be poor? And the answer was yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, is money the thing? Of course eventually I want to be abundant again, and I'm sure I will be. But for me, quality of life, internally, do I need money to be happy? And the answer was no. And I had never made my life so big that I would be forced into those sort of golden handcuffs. Like I was in a rent stabilized apartment, and I started teaching at NYU acting, and I was like, okay, I'm making enough money to pay my rent, my therapy, and my gym. The rest of it will come. And it did.
Yeah.
You just got to leap and just have faith that a better net will appear, because your future liberation and happiness is really dependent on being courageous in that moment. And if I can do it, anyone can do it.
And I so love that. And that seems, as we start having more and more of these conversations, there seems to be like that 2-year, 3-year kind of, even after some people have made the
marination of what am I doing?
Yeah, we talked to a pastor that we had on the show the other day that chose not to necessarily be a traditional pastor anymore, and kind of went against what he was preaching to do what he knew was
what
right
he was
in his heart,
to.
what he was drawn to. But he said it was like after he made this decision, there was 2 years of like, oh no, was this really the right decision? Was it not the right? And finally, after about 2 years, it's like an event happened. He's like, no. Then he could definitely see that was the right path he was supposed to be on. So it's, I guess for all of us and the people listening and watching the show, it isn't it's a process.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying, it's a process, and it does.
When the decision's made, it's not like we said, it's not
necessarily
white picket fences, unicorns.
The fear doesn't magically just, all of the fear doesn't magically evaporate. It just maybe starts to quiet down because you get more and more, I guess, certainty on the other side that you are, you feel less stress, or you feel more pulled versus pushed, or to your point, you're running towards something versus running away from something. I love the way you said that, because I think a lot of us in life are making our choices running away from that pain that we've experienced or pain that we experience. So we're running away thinking that we're accomplishing. I know when I started out in business, it was all about getting my name in the paper and significance and all this stuff. And I thought I was running towards people liking me. And no, I was running away from being alone, right? I just wanted people to know me so I wouldn't feel alone or I wouldn't feel unloved, right? So I was, and when I realized that, it wasn't very pleasant. There was a long period of time where it was just like, this sucks.
I think there's got to be a willingness, though. Deepak Chopra, I studied with him for years and years ago, but he, the known and the unknown.
Yes.
And it was like, we always want everything to be known.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to know the outcome. I'm going to know it's going to be successful. And Deepak said, it is in the unknown that the infinite possibilities, the pure potential of your life exists. And I think that having a dedicated meditation practice for the past 20 years has a lot to do with my life, my internal experience being what it is, which then is reflected in my external experience.
I agree with that. And I would say that, I know even for me, like when I think about those choice points or those forks in the road and the times I didn't take them, and at some point, when I started becoming more self-aware and having mindfulness and then realizing that the only fear that I have was the fear of regret of not trying. In other words, and so that really is my only fear at this point.
Interesting.
Where I'm like, if I'll try anything, I'm not afraid of trying or doing, going with or without, but it's the fear of like, wow, I'm feeling drawn towards something and I'm talking myself out of it. That's my fear. I don't want to be sitting in my deathbed and all those ideas walking around shaking their head. Like, if you only,
if you only would have engaged with it.
That's my fear.
And so when you talk about specifically, because and I think I read that in your bio that you have a meditation practice. What does that look like for you specifically? Because a lot of people think meditation, I think, is more complex sometimes than it really is. It's like, how do I start meditating that? So for you, what does that meditation practice look like?
I get up every day. I do primordial sound meditation. So I have my own mantra that I've never told anyone in 20 years.
And we're revealing it today on the show.
Today
today with Terri, the mantra that she's used, the secret mantra to make a happier life, right?
Is there a drum roll sound effect?
Yeah, exactly. This is going to be a huge, big press release here. So anyway, so you have a mantra.
So, yes, I have what I call a Zenden.
Okay.
Which is an area in my home that it's very cozy. I've got little twinkly lights and a candle, and I like things that smell good. And if whatever time of year it is, I like moss, I like leaves. I have some nature element in there as well. Picture of my dad, deities that I feel empowered by, and then I just put a timer on my phone that's very gentle, and I meditate for 20 minutes.
Yep.
In the first few minutes, I'm asking these questions of the universe. Who am I? What am I really grateful for? What do I really want? And really, what is my dharma? How can I, be of service to myself and others in the world with my unique and special gifts and talents? So I repeat those, and then it's like I exhale them out to the universe, having faith that those answers will come back to me throughout the day. And that's it. Now, some days I meditate twice, but not all the time. But I definitely always do the morning meditation because it's a way to calibrate my day.
Right.
I love it.
And I think a lot of the guests we do talk to that are successful like yourself, they do have a morning practice, and almost all of them have talked about meditation, mindfulness, prayer,
taking care
quiet
of yourself.
Time,
all about
however they define it for themselves. But there is this kind of choosing what you're going to experience in the day versus just reacting to what the day brings, right? So if you're focused on these things, I would guess that more often than not, you're given answers to all these questions throughout the day, and it's probably a practice now where it's like almost automatic. You're like, oh, there's gratitude, or is that kind of how that?
Oh yeah, and I also have gratitude practice at night with my husband, where we share 3 gratitudes in our favorite frame of the day.
Oh, I love that.
Again, because these are muscles that, with our negativity bias as humans, if we're not flexing our gratitude muscle, trust me, there's so many things to complain about,
right?
And so many small, petty things to be focused on, where it is a muscle, and we do it together. We also meditate together. I mean, unless one of us gets up earlier, but generally speaking, I love sharing that.
Right.
Oh,
with
that's
him.
nice.
And you said 3 things that you're grateful for, and did you say something else? 3 things you're grateful for?
Yes. and our favorite frame of the day, like our favorite moment.
Oh, gotcha.
Favorite
Favorite
of the day.
moment. Okay.
Oh, I love that. Well, I tell you that one thing about just thinking about what you're grateful for, that can make or break a day for me. If I start a day and end a day with that can be everything. If I don't do anything else, if I do that can make. If I don't do it, I mean, it's a huge difference. I think that is one of my go-tos when I find myself getting overcome with whatever. I go to the gratitude piece, and it really centers me.
Yeah, I agree 110%.
And it's simple, right? You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to get a degree. It's free.
And
right?
if you're grateful, you can't be angry. Really, there's no. I mean, you can't be sad. If you're grateful, there's just that. It's just a space of grace, right? I mean, it's a grateful space.
Yes.
Did you consider yourself a boundary boss when you made this fork in the road, or did the boundary kind of knowledge come as you became a psychotherapist?
Yes.
Yeah.
That, the latter thing. No, I was very aware that, entertainment is not a hotbed of mental health or healthy boundaries, obviously, because there's so much melding over, because I was also young and had young clients, and there's this headiness that, I was representing supermodels in the heyday of supermodels.
Right,
Remember George Michael?
Yes.
With all of them in his video. Like, I was representing a lot of those women. And thank God I was already sober by then, because I don't even know what the 90s would have looked like for me had I not been.
The train wreck that could have been, huh?
Oh, my Lord, please. But I did know that I was too available, that I was working too much, that I was too codependent with other people, that my boundaries were too malleable. And I'd been, at that point, I'd had therapy for X number of years, where I started really being able to identify what was causing the pain and frustration in my life. And being in a business that was really against my integrity, my own integrity, personal integrity, that was really took its toll on me. And I really knew I really did have to get out. I was trying to change a business, but it was starting to change me. And I was like, I need to get out before I get completely changed by this experience. But really, once I became a therapist, so I'd say between my late 20s to my early 30s is when I really started dialing into the power of boundaries. Because once I had a private practice, I was like, oh my God, disordered boundaries, this is an epidemic. Every person who walks in, I could follow the dots back to the origin of their pain is their inability to talk true. To tell the truth about how they feel, is their inability. They're saying yes when they want to say no all the time. They're exhausted from over giving and over feeling and over functioning. And those are all boundary issues. And so I started taking copious notes, and really I created a course about 5 years ago called Boundary Boot Camp, because I wanted to test out, like, what works? Will what worked in my office one-on-one work virtually with a group? The answer was yes. But then I did a huge survey of the people who were in that course, and I really got it to the creme de la creme of what is most effective, most impactful, what resonated most with most people, and that's what ended up in the book.
That's great. You talk about it as we wrap up here. I wish we had another 2 hours with you, but I think that you talk about a boundary revolution. What do you hope happens? I mean, obviously you wrote this book, but you talk about a boundary revolution in the book. What's the ripple effect? What do you hope happens with all of this work?
I mean, my dharma, my purpose, is to help people elevate their joy in life, their satisfaction in life, so that they can contribute what it is they're meant to contribute to the world, because we so need everyone's individual contributions, and teaching them how to lessen their own suffering.
Yeah.
Because so much of this is just unconscious stuff that they just need someone, like, I'm nobody's guru. I'm just a damn good GPS to show you where the crap is that you need to deal with. That will help liberate you from thinking small or living small or feeling bad about yourself. So to me, a boundary revolution is that every person in every country, whether you have $0 or many dollars, that you can have access to this life-changing, these strategies, this methodology that absolutely works and is tried and true and is thousands of times over, that it's not just people who have money. And that's part of why I don't have, I have a couple of high-profile clients, and that's it at this point in my therapy practice. Because I didn't want to just become so exclusive that only people who are loaded could work with me. I knew that if I wrote a book, the waitress in Omaha who has 3 kids and feels like she's just screwed forever can realize she's not. This is a book that's $20 and you're not screwed. Like there literally is a way out of this. You can find your way to a happier life and more abundance, and then contribute what you're meant to contribute to the world.
I love it. The book is great. You did a really, really good job. It's very pragmatic and practical in the sense that you can follow the steps. A lot of self-awareness. You're going to find out a lot of answers by going through and reading it. And even though I know you target this towards women, but if you're a man and doing this, I mean, I got a lot out of this myself. So I know that what you're trying to do with it. But if you're a man, I wouldn't be afraid of getting this book. Not at all. I think you did a really good job.
And really, any gender identity, honestly,
right.
We all have to deal with boundaries.
Right.
So if the language in the book hopefully will not be offensive to you, because I do reference women a lot, the strategies are absolutely for you, no matter who you are.
Yeah. There's nothing offensive in this book. Not at all.
Right.
Fantastic stuff, Terri. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I learned a ton. Like I said, I hope we can stay in touch. Hopefully, maybe you can come back on the show. There's so many other things we can explore. How can people learn more about you, connect with you? You got a great podcast, all that stuff. How can people connect with you?
Well, first, I want to say thank you, Richard. Thank you, Matt. I so appreciate your time, your interest, taking the time to actually read the book. You're like one of 4 podcast people who interviewed me who I think actually read the book, so thank you. People can find me at terricole.com. And if they're interested in getting the book, I have a lot of really juicy bonuses that I'm still just giving to people because I want to at boundarybossbook.com. You can find me on Instagram at Terri Cole. That's where I probably hang out the most. And I do have a podcast that I just surpassed 2 million downloads. It's called The Terri Cole Show. Thank you. And you can find it anywhere you consume your podcasts. You can find The Terri Cole Show. But thank you guys for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. And thank you. Yeah, again, thank you just for, I'd love to figure out how we could have you be a bigger part of our community at Next Level Method. I just love your message. I love the pragmatic side of this is something you can do. I love the fact that you did it through the example in your own life. So certainly, if we can help you expand your reach and your frequency and get your message out, we'd love to help you do that. So thank you for
Yes.
Thank you for being thank you for being that light, shining your light and illuminating others, because that's how we make a better world. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Terri. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Next Level Method podcast. If you found some value in this, tell somebody about the show. Tell your friends, tell your spouse, tell your kids, let them know all about Next Level Method. And go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more and join our community. Thanks for tuning in.